Hey everybody, welcome back to Podcast Patrol. We're back. If you have been lucky enough to watch the last part, the final episodes of season 4, we wanted to wait until those came out and come back to the story and come back to our favorite cast members and kind of do a little retrospective conversation about what happened, like what we all experienced as a community, what this show gave us over the last 4 seasons. So thank you for tuning back in. I'm Yoobee3. Kathleen couldn't make this one, but she'll be on the next one. And I want to welcome back Stephanie Czajkowski, who plays Hammerhead. Hi.
Hi.
What's going on?
Oh, just still kind of, it's always that thing of like watching the finale, like once you shut, there's like mini deaths, right? Like you wrap it, you think it's probably the end, or at least, I mean, when I wrapped episode 11, I'm like, okay. And then they announced they're not, it is the last season. And then you have to wait, you have to see the end of it. Like, it's just like, death by 1,000 knife cuts a little bit, just because when your heart is somewhere, you so don't want something to end.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I didn't even think about that for the actors. That's a great, I love that because, well, I don't love it for you, the mini deaths, but you have to, this emotional journey you're on is not just in the show, it's like in real life too. And if it
Yeah.
really truly means something to you, man, that's a good point. You've hit it. You've hit those emotional gut punches several times.
Yeah.
That's wow. So I mean, how do you deal with that personally? Because I want to talk about all kinds of things, trauma, all, like this show brought so much to light. But
Yeah.
so starting off with that, like how do you deal with things like that personally and in your life? Because you've had a lot.
Yeah. Well, you hope things go on, but you also have to recognize that all things come to an end. Um, and so I think that I have gotten pretty good at making sure I'm taking advantage of cherishing the moment and cherishing being there, right? Because it's, in particular, Doom Patrol was it was one of, if not my favorite job to do for so many reasons. And so it's incredibly bittersweet, but I remember going back for, that last episode and being like, I wanted to be in more episodes, because you get used to it and then you get used to it. And then you're just like, I'm not going back. And it's fear of missing out with your friends and all the other stuff. And just being like, when I read that script and how we were going to basically tie up Jane's story, I cried, like, it just because it was so beautiful. And I feel like when you get to be a part, or at least I get to be a part of something that ends so well, that you can't help but be proud of it, to take pride in what happened and know that, you kind of are like, we did that.
Yeah.
And so you just, you celebrate the wins and you mourn the loss. And, it just means that something else is, it's making room for something else. I gotta believe that,
Absolutely. And I mean, is that, so what was cool, I was reading an interview with Jeremy Carver, right, who created the
Yeah.
show, and he was there from day one.
Yeah.
What?
And he has fantastic hair. Well, at least I met him the first season. He has some fantastic hair. Oh my
Did he
God.
really? That's amazing. I love that you remember that about
It's
him.
very, it was very thick and pompadour-y in the first season. And I
Oh,
think
nice.
pandemic, it got longer. Like I saw a picture. I haven't seen him in person since I think the first season, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, how did he set the stage for everybody when, was, because it seemed like there's this huge familial aspect to it, but also he mentioned, so like he got the job, he studied up really quickly, and it was like a 3-month, really quick
just like, here you
start.
go.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. So how did
I think a little bit, especially in that first season, we all were, because we're coming in as the Janes. Like I was coming in episode 9 out of 15. So they had started to establish what the show was.
Yeah.
And I mean, they were still kind of figuring it out, right? And so, Diane was immensely helpful and really generous in being like, okay, I've created these characters on the outside. This is what I do, like kind of this is what I do.
Yeah.
And I just remember specifically in the underground being like, okay, you don't like, here's how this character feels, this persona feels about this persona. And so in terms of the structure to start there, that was really helpful. And then everything just kind of went from there, I was really lucky because I became pretty friendly with the production manager. So if I was going back and I wasn't in an episode, I would ask if I could get permission to read the episode. So I knew where we were.
For sure.
So I know where Jane was, so that it was easier to go back and be like, oh, okay, this is what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean, because they didn't necessarily afford that to everybody, because you also want to keep a lock on the scripts. You don't want them getting out. So
Absolutely.
I was lucky enough, but I also don't know if anyone else asked. Like, I just made it my business, even if like I just made it my business because I was like, I want to know what's happening, because what's happening is going to change how all of this is going down. So,
well,
you're
yeah,
not just flying blind.
absolutely. Well, especially when, you're all part of one character, right? I
Yeah.
mean, in a sense, right? And
Yeah.
and I mean, there's so much to like just keep up with and unpack there. For me, like the conversation on trauma. I mean, so because clearly, I mean, in the final episode, I think just did a beautiful job of culminating Kay's trauma, right,
Mm-hmm.
and bringing that to a, a conclusion so that Jane could move on,
Yeah.
and you could all grow. But leading up to that, in the 4 seasons, how were there conversations about trauma? Like, I mean, did you all have, like, I don't know, like, how did all of that come to be to a point where you could all portray this incredible journey that was, I mean, just so also just freaking heartbreaking,
Yeah. I think, I mean, we did not necessarily powwow over
Yeah.
trauma. I think, you don't openly talk about it, but I think no one escapes life without some sort of trauma. And
Right.
there's a reason they end up casting you in an
Mm.
aspect of, Jane. I feel like, when I've been asked, why Hammerhead, I'm like, oh yeah, here we have a persona that only utilizes anger and aggression
Mhm.
for something that covers up so much other stuff. And I'm like, oh, I understand that because I do that, or
Yeah.
I have done that. I've grown out of that, but that is part of who I am. So I think a lot of it is, at least for me, is really understanding and having some part of yourself connect on a really deep level. I think it's also the reason why it was such a powerful show,
Mm-hmm.
because it spoke to the ugliness that is the human condition, but also made it not palpable, but to say it's palpable, like, oh, it's ugly, but we can handle it. It's no,
Right.
because the ugliness is part of the beauty.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's why I think it resonates so powerfully with so many people, because I mean, it's sort of an exaggerated portrayal of life,
Yeah.
but a portrayal of life. I mean, I think,
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, everybody has some form of trauma. I mean, there's this, it's, I went through EMDR therapy,
Mhm.
for PTSD stuff that came from a workplace thing, and
Yeah.
like, but it's a spectrum, right? It's probably everybody could do with that sort of therapy,
Yeah.
because there's
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
and this show, I think, gave people maybe an ability to explore that. I don't want to say in a fun way, because that's not the way to do it, but kind of, I mean, in
Well,
a really interesting way.
I think it makes it okay. it
Yeah,
makes it
yeah,
okay to, I think there's a reason that like, Hammerhead was a favorite because like the F-bombs and coming out and just, like, because there's so many people who, if they could, would just be like, you get so angry that you want to beat, like, and that is, the exterior expression of that was that thing that so many of us don't dare do when faced with bullying or whatever, like, just then you get
yeah,
away
totally.
from it.
Right.
So
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
yeah, so I think it's that thing of it, because you had a show, you had characters who weren't afraid to express it, to
Hmm.
express these things, how warts and ollie they may be, with one another. It gave permission for you to recognize it in yourself without judgment.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other part of it that I love too is, I mean, they fought every step of the way to not be superheroes,
Yeah,
and I think a lot of us are not necessarily in that type of position, but in a position to fight back against what other people expect of us
yeah,
so much. And I
yeah.
mean, like, what did people expect of you when you were growing up as a kid?
I think it was a mix of, I think it was a mix of things where,
Yeah,
I had one parent who just wanted me, like, unequivocally was just like, do whatever you want. You want to be happy. And then I
yeah,
had one parent who had a very specific idea of, and was an incredibly like a taskmaster, like, you will
mhm,
do this, was, kind of an enforcer in a way that was just
mhm.
not, it's not conducive to freedom. Like, it's funny because I'm like, I'm used to people yelling at me, like, and I found it semi useful in acting, because
Sure.
like I had teachers like that who would just be like, I'm gonna yell, and just realizing like, oh, I can short circuit this bullshit by, but also as you get older, you recognize that, this mode of, shall we say, not inspiration, but motivation, which
Motivate.
is
Yeah,
very much I think, an outmoded, patriarchal, kind of misogynist way of getting the best from people, is, like, it's so old, like, it's this, I'm going to yell at you, I'm going to shame you until
yeah,
you do your best, like, somehow that's
yeah. Right.
supposed to work. And here's the
Yeah,
thing, for some people it does, but,
yeah,
or they say it does, but I would also question, like, okay, they say it does, but then you're always doing something for an external
hmm,
reward. And I don't
hmm.
know, and what do you do when that goes away, like, or you're always searching for that it seems to me that that sort of impetus creates an individual, or conditions them to be only validated from anything that is
Mm.
external,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, for sure. Well, and I think that was sort of exemplified in the show by, I mean, yeah, they had to come together and save the world, save the universe, but then
Yeah.
they rejected it again, right? Like, they none of them ever felt truly comfortable as a superhero.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of, all right, well, like, we're doing things, to your point, for reward,
Yeah.
or because somebody's yelling at us and maybe we just want to get them off our back. So we're just going to
Yeah.
do it. But that's not really who we are. Like,
Yeah.
we're only doing it for somebody else. We're not doing it for ourselves. And I think that's the beauty of how the show wrapped up, is that they all finally were like, I need to do something for myself.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Or
this
it's
is
or it's yeah, or it's the idea that there's a level of expectation that, or that you are one thing. And I feel like superheroes, that
totally.
was like, you're caught in
Yeah.
this box and we are all multiple things. But
Yeah.
it's very easy I think it's very easy to be like, oh, this is this person and this is who they are, because to keep people in little boxes is just, it's neat and it's tidy,
Yeah, for sure.
it's neat and it's tidy to not look at the amazing things that make people contradictory. I mean,
Hmm.
humankind, the thing that makes us beautiful, which is a really hard thing to, I think, wrap people's brains around, is like, I feel like the professor is a perfect example of that. Like, you can both be a really caring, loving person and an asshole. Like, you can
Totally.
be, it's like I have been rolling through life right now, and for the many years, is two things can be true at the same time.
Yeah.
And we seem to be getting even further away from the idea that you can hold space for multiple things, because it is not just one or the other, even as
Absolutely.
much as anyone would want that to be the truth.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of Timothy Dalton, did you got to work with him? I think it was your last
The last
scene.
episode, he was lovely. He
Was
was
he?
he was very
Oh,
nice. And then we
that's
ended
so
up on the
cool.
same plane. He was sitting behind me. Like, it was,
Oh, you're kidding. How
yeah, yeah.
funny.
Yeah. Was he was, oh yeah. Oh yeah. And he was there. It was so funny. He was sitting behind me.
Yeah.
And then I ended up meeting a flight attendant on the flight home who had gone through breast cancer. Like, there was a big, like, chit
Yeah.
chat about, because I'm like, super open about having cancer. And so, like, as a result, my
Oh,
husband calls me the cancer whisperer. So it was
love
like,
it.
we're by the bathroom, like, like, 'cause she had had two of the cancers that I, like, it was one of these things. And I think he was kind of like, he came back and he was up to you, like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that's right. And I'm like, I talk about cancer,
Yeah,
like, it's like, oh yeah, I had breakfast cancer, like,
right,
yeah.
totally.
And I forget that that is in the, and it's in the Doom Patrol kind of way, like, it's an uncomfortable thing that is super normal for me. So,
Absolutely. Oh, that's so cool.
but,
How funny.
but yeah, he was
What
great. It's great.
I love it. Yeah, he was I always liked him as Bond. Some people don't didn't like him as
Yeah,
James
no, I
Bond
thought he did a good
necessarily,
job.
but yeah, different take, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, so looking back at the last four seasons, and you've been doing some posts and kind of looking back yourself at
Yeah.
some of your favorite moments. I mean, what were some of your what were your top five like moments of working on the show, whether it was behind the scenes or whether it was an episode or a character? Like what did you love?
I loved, unequivocally, there were two moments that happened with two different directors. But
Yeah.
the very first episode we did, I mean, working with Brendan Fraser, of course, but getting to hit Brendan Fraser was great.
Yes,
But
yes.
that very first episode was the first time we met the underground.
Yeah.
And there was multiple things in that I loved. Personally, I loved it because I'd just gone through I was going through breast cancer. Pretty much, we thought we were done with chemo. We weren't really sure if we were going to do two more, just to, like, make sure we drove it home. And it
Hmm.
was the first time that I just got to be like, oh, that gets to be somewhere else and I get to go do this. Like, it was an escape for me. I got to go to Atlanta. I reconnected with one of my best friends from high school that I hadn't seen in years, like decades.
Yeah.
And to boot, 25 women, or, mostly, or female presenting, I don't think there was any non-binary, but we didn't get into it. But
Sure.
it was the first time I had been on set with that many, female presenting characters,
Hmm.
because you're not usually. And even still, like, they had a good balance on Doom Patrol, but, like, even still, they're writing stuff and they're trying to make stuff more diverse, but you look at the breakdown and it's still, like, it's still 60% men, or male presenting. And
Yeah.
so to be in that was really interesting, and to see it.
Hmm.
I got to do a little more stunts in that, so that was great. Like, pulling, I got to pull in, I got to do the dragon by the hair. Like, it was just so, like, badass and cool.
Yeah.
That was definitely one of my favorite. Like, that's top, like, the first, like, halcyon, experience. After that was season 2, when Candlemaker right after, in season 2, episode 5, I think, or
Yeah.
6, 5 or 6. I think it was, I can't remember. it was the funeral. It was the funeral pile and
Mm,
walking, and same thing. All of these female presenting characters and a female director to boot, like all of it.
mm,
It's just that, like that amount of energy that wasn't solely masculine was just something that I'd never experienced before.
mm.
Um, and it was that consistent bonding as you went. Like it was this familiarity you'd get to come back and see these characters again and see these friends that you've made. And then, watching, Va, who is playing Madam, she's in the gay show, Madam, what was her name? Getting like bumped up to like be able to say words, or, and watching slowly but
Mhm.
surely more of the personalities have agency, which
Right.
was really phenomenal. Um, it's kind of like I melded all those into one big thing. And
Yeah.
just being able to, play with Diane, get to know Diane, and just really watch. She's such a talented artist and such a wonderful person. And being able to get to know her, like as
Yeah.
professionally and a little bit personally, not super personally. Like I actually was just at a Comic-Con in Rhode Island with her in April, who I
Oh
had met
yeah.
until I was at the Comic-Con.
Oh really? How
Because we like
funny.
you're like ships passing in the night.
Sure, sure.
So and then there was when we were in the fog, when we got to hang out with
Oh yeah, sure.
Jovan, like
Yeah.
stuff when that happened where we got to actually interact with other characters other than the people, like to be a little more part of it. So
Yeah. I think Doom Patrol um did brought women to the forefront. I mean,
yeah,
in such a great way. I mean, it just across the board. Like
yeah.
even this last season with Isabel Feathers, and
My God, that was so fun. Yeah.
isn't it though? I mean, it's just I
Your
just
most unlikely, well, and that's the beauty of it is like, who is your unlikely, who's
totally.
your unlikely villain?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you think um was that a priority, do you think, or do you think it just happened?
I think, I don't know that they set out to do it, but
Yeah.
I do think that Jeremy was smart in having a room full of really thoughtful and inclusive writers.
Yeah.
Like Shoshana, like Shoshana, like basically started out as a showrunner and kept moving up and
Yeah.
became one of the she was by the time she left, she was an executive producer, but she was like e co-producer or something. But seeing in particular that influence come
Yeah.
in, and
Yeah.
also apparently having a room where he was just open to whatever, like the crazier the better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think well, I think what was really cool about that was he was saying in the interview I was reading that he didn't know anything about Doom Patrol coming into
Yeah,
this. Like, and so he just dove in, and I think there's some freedom there, right, to absorb all the material, but then leave it open to
yeah,
just come up with some crazy ass ideas. Like,
yeah, but
uh,
still stay true to it's because it's always interesting to see like the diehard fans be like, I love season one, but I don't like season two, like take
yeah,
very big positions. And I'm like, I think season one teaches you just have to be like, I'm along for the ride,
yeah, exactly, yeah,
and in explaining it to people who are watching it and who are used to like very linear TV.
yeah,
I'm like, you have to watch season one and you just have to kind of let it wash over you. Cause sometimes you're just like, I don't know what the fuck is happening. Okay. Like literally you
totally,
kind of need to do that a little bit.
yeah, absolutely,
And then you go back and watch it. Cause like, I think I just rewatched the pilot last week and I'm like, oh, that's right. Fuck. It's really fucking good.
yeah, yeah. I mean, just visually, like everything about the whole series was
Yeah.
just. I mean, they just swung for it and they hit it, and I don't know. It's like I don't want it to be just a flash in the pan kind of scenario. Like you would
Yeah.
hope that there's something like that in the DC future. But who knows, right? Who knows?
Well, I feel like James Gunn, he reportedly likes it. I mean, he reportedly likes it. There's a part of me that's is not very happy with the powers that be at DC or at HBO.
Sure.
Just from the standpoint, like it's like I had no compunction making running jokes about this. It came out on DC Universe. Great. And then HBO Max was coming out. And then they kind of fucked up the rollout of that. And that was when our second season was. And then once everybody had HBO Max, it was like season 3 was finally the season that it seemed like AT&T owned HBO at the time. Or Warner was like, okay, we're going to actually promote this. And it was the year also that people were like, have you seen this new shit? Like it was, people
Really?
were, because it was like,
Yeah.
and then like right after that, they sold it to Discovery, and it was kind of like it kind of came and just like no one knew when it was coming at and I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah. It's like a
And there was, and with
yeah.
all the like horse trading going on behind the scenes of everything, like there was part of me that was just like, I do not like Netflix, but you know what? I would not be really angry if they licensed this to Netflix, if only so that eyeballs, like it gets the eyeballs it deserves. Because I think it's such a specific show and the people who love it really love it, but I think so many more people would love it. They just don't know it's there.
Yeah.
And I kept arguing forever that I'm like, this show is just as good as Watchmen, and it's just as good as The Voice.
Absolutely.
It's different, but it's just as good. And it is getting some traction. It's getting quiet traction.
Yeah.
But the kind of like is literally because they just did not invest enough money in it, in promoting it.
Yeah.
Is my take on it. And not because I'm in it, but also because it's such a good show. I mean, it's the Frasier sans. Like after he won an Oscar, how are you not blowing it the fuck out there?
Yes, exactly. Right. I mean,
because he's fantastic at it.
Exactly. This, they're like, oh, well, that was his big comeback, the Oscar and all that. Well, no, it was Doom Patrol. Like if you want to talk about comeback, whatever how
was the freight, the beginning of the freight.
He started, yes, he came back. Like what a brilliant. The casting was spot on. I think across the board. I mean, I love Michelle Gomez when she came in. I mean, isn't she great? So much. Isn't she?
I think hilarious? I walked past her in a trailer, and part of me wanted to be like, because I watched her in Sabrina the Teenage Witch and like they used to do that. She used to post in this thing where like they were holding her up in the air, and I'm like, I didn't know her well enough because I was
But
I was like, can I just hold you in the air?
Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
Yeah.
Whose character journey did you appreciate the most?
I think Rita's. I mean, across the board, I'm always Jane. Like I'm always Jane. Like I'm just like, come on. But second to Jane, I kind of think Rita's, simply because it was really interesting to watch her seemingly like she's going nowhere and then have this kind of big experience in a way that I never suspected that they would be able to do that.
Yeah, incredible, right? And especially, had she lived the longest? I'm trying to think. Was she the one?
She might have been.
Was she the oldest? Like she was the longest one who dealt with that, right? So,
and she was April's so she's spot on. Like she's just so spot on to like that 50s, like she just nails it. It's just
absolutely. Well, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think I thought the series was spectacular. I think the finale was truly just like devastatingly beautiful. Like, I mean, it was just so well done. Like, there's not many finales that get that right. And like 6 Feet Under. I mean, they had
Yeah.
such a great finale, right? Or I don't know. I mean, Picard season 3, but that's just because I'm a fan.
Yeah.
But it was so good, right? And
Yeah.
then this one, I mean, this one, it just was beautiful. Like, it was
Yeah.
just
Well, and it's
beautiful.
just, it lets you know where people go. And it just, I mean,
Yeah.
the, Cliff stuff, I was like, oh,
I
oh
know,
God.
right?
Yeah,
Stunning.
that and just, but the Rita stuff was just beautiful in a way that
Yeah,
I just never suspected,
yeah, yeah. Totally agree.
just, and,
Mm,
it just, it wrapped everyone really well without it being like, everyone's happy. Like, everyone
yeah,
kind of is happy, but like
in their own way.
in their own way, in a way that
Yeah,
isn't like they're going to be coming back to do a team.
exactly, exactly. Who knows what, who knows what's going to happen.
I know,
Well, so
right?
what's the one thing you would say to the fans, like kind of your final parting thought?
Thank you for watching. Thank you for telling people about it. Thank you for being really incredibly invested in devoted fans. Like, just of the fans that I've met, I think, I've met people online and I got to meet people really specifically, like in person, because I started the con circuit this year a little bit. And it was, I mean, for me personally, like, we've been on strike, blah, blah, blah. We're fighting
Mhm.
against, corporations. And there was a part of me that was like, why do we even do this? Like,
Mm,
why?
sure.
And going and meeting fans and seeing and talking to them and just knowing that, it's that they'd share in the stuff that we're doing, but also in this wonderful story across the board is just, I mean, it's why I do it, but you don't necessarily know that until you meet them.
Yeah,
And, and that's really something. It builds a community in a way, well, forever. I mean,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah,
it builds, I mean, it builds community, it builds, connection forever. And that's priceless.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, thank you. It was good to see you again. I'm
Good to
glad
see
we
you
got to
too.
kind of, go yeah, wrap it up and hopefully, yeah, hopefully it gains legs again, right? Or keeps
I
continuing, like you
hope so.
said.
Like, I feel like it's like that stinking thing that, like, it's that thing of, like, reminds me of like Freaks and Geeks. It's like a
Totally.
fantastic
Yes.
show that everyone discovers like 7 years later or something.
Yeah,
Like,
right. Or Firefly, right? Like,
yeah.
I mean
I
that
mean, I was on Firefly the first round, but all right, I'm just gonna say.
were you really?
Yeah.
When?
Oh, no, 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 I wasn't on it. Like, I
Oh,
watched
I
it.
thought
Like, like, I wasn't like,
yeah, yeah.
oh, but I was
Same,
just like
same,
the
same.
first go round. I was like, oh yeah, like, yeah,
Yeah, like the 12 released episodes, and I think there were
yeah,
14 total. And
yeah.
I think whoever the studio screwed the whole thing up, and
Fox,
it was just Fox.
like
Yes,
Fox, yeah,
Fox screwed it up. Same thing with the Orville. Luckily, the Orville found a new home, but
yeah,
similar
yeah,
thing. And so anyway,
yeah.
well, hopefully they're listening and they realize like how powerful these properties, these shows, these stories can be to the community. So thank you for talking about it
Oh,
with us.
you're welcome.
And
Thanks for having me.
yeah, always, always. We'll see you soon. And we'll see
Yeah.
all of you soon. Thank you for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.